our recommendation is that ITC provide a wide variety of R&D schemes. Some require industry sponsorship. Others can have their own strategic R&D investment, even without the industrial participation right from the beginnings. Okay, some are not uneasy with the regulation approval from the Financial Committee to the Legislators' Council. Right now, the ceilings has been raised to 21 million Hong Kong dollars. I think for these kinds of projects to kick off, the research proposal had to go through at least 5 panels. Though some of the panels are very simple, but we still make our recommendation that as the funding practice in many countries, the Technology Review Committee should be given authority to make the decision before reporting to ITC for final approval. I think our recommendation is upon the completion of their project time span, the ITC to conduct intensive evaluation on the performance of the individual R&D centers. Also, eventually, the ITC had to make a critical decision for the consolidation of the program in the future. This consolidation is become more necessary if we take into account the mismatch between public R&D and private R&D.
But there are other things that are always the same. In particular, the tremendous sense of vitality, dynamism, the can-do mentality that characterizes Hong Kong people. That's always been there. And those are some of the qualities that have ensured a rapid and successful economic development in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, also a successful transition in the 1990s. That previous success, though, was based on a very free market approach. Hong Kong was an exemplar of laissez-faire, a successful exemplar. It worked very successfully for 50 years. But I'm not sure that that approach is suitable or adequate for a future in which technology and innovation are more and more important. As we've heard in several papers, and we'll see later today and tomorrow, Hong Kong may now need to move to new and more explicit approaches to policy and to intervention. And that implies quite fundamental changes in Hong Kong values, Hong Kong culture, Hong Kong politics, Hong Kong ideology. Hong Kong has not been very active in R&D and technological innovation. R&D expenditure, well, you've seen the figures now several times, 0.8% of GDP. Now, for many of you, you may not know the significance of that. 0.8% puts you in the same league as developing countries. OECD countries spend 2 to 3% of GDP on R&D. And the really dynamic ones, northern Scandinavian countries, Finland, Sweden, Israel, and Korea also has very ambitious targets. They're over 3% and increasing. Countries like Japan, US, they're the high 2 to 3% range. Britain's lagging, we're 1.8%. And yes, we then say, oh, well, this figure, it's only an input figure. The implication being we're somehow smarter, we're more efficient, we can get away with spending less. And I heard a little bit of that this morning about Hong Kong. But you can't hide behind that. If you want to be up there and be a hub in this innovation system around the world, you've got to get serious. You won't do it with 0.8%.